I'll tell you a story. I walk up to a group of ladies, I know them all, and I'm with my mom and I'm telling her who they all are. Well, she used to be the CEO of this company. She founded this company, but every one of them are now on their own, independently of any company. And I got thinking to myself, is that some sort of trend where women lead organizations and then find themselves where too strong, then individuals get them that are not very aggressive, bossy, which all of those I believe we would never say about a male leader.
There's a different vocabulary for men and women. A man does something, it's strategic. A woman does the same thing, it's calculated. A man is allowed to react, a woman can only overreact.
Fire VR has been activated. The recent developments within the industry have sparked an unprecedented wave of conversation and speculation among professionals. Back again with her hot takes in the industry is third-time returning guest, the co-founder and chief revenue officer at Shortcuts, Michelle Marquis. Our host, Steve Milo, is ready to tackle the latest developing news on the industry. Steve, when you're ready, take aim.
Hey, thank you, Heather. Michelle, happy 2024. We had you on at the end of 2023. I thought it'd be a little quiet, but then a lot of news has broken in the last couple of weeks. And I want to kind of just start off by talking about Vacasa earning report, which just occurred. And there was so much in this report. And I know you also listened to the audio of the quarterly announcement, and so did I. The headline in a couple of the publications was about the layoff. So Vacasa laid off 5% additionally of their workforce. So they had previously laid off 1,700 people, or that about 200 people, and now this will be a little over 300. And then the Chief Operating Officer, John Banzek, also known as JB, is leaving the company as of March 31st. And he was one of the co-founders of Turnkey. But beyond the headlines of the layoff and the chief operating officer, John Banzek, was leaving, there is just so much bad news in these reports. So first and foremost, the gross booking value and revenue dropped 19% in fourth quarter 2023 compared to the same quarter 2022. And that was driven by a 15% year-over-year decrease in gross booking value and a 5% decrease in nights sold. Not maybe a surprise for listeners about how bad the U.S. market has been over the past 18 to 24 months, but certainly something that Vacasa hadn't been forecasting. And in fact, the news was so bad that they were unwilling to give a 2024 forecast. So I'm going to give you some room to kind of talk about it, because I listened to the audio, I read the report, I actually took a look at the balance sheet and did an analysis. It is just grim news all the way around.
Well, you clearly did way more homework than I did, but obviously I too listened to the earnings call and took notes. Probably the thing that surprised me the most was, well, let's first of all say they are doing better than they thought they were going to do. So let's just give them that, as far as they expected things to be a little bit worse, it sounds like, and from the previous earning calls. So got to give them that. But some of the stuff they said, like that they were down 5% in new homes, but they had put a lot of money and resources into organic growth, which is adding units. So then I thought to myself, what's the true net of that? Right? If they only lost 5% of their homeowners, but they had one of their main strategies was getting new homes, was the net really 20%, 25%? So that was one of the things I thought to myself, what's the truth there? As far as the layoffs go, they have been doing a lot of stuff to be more, I'm going to say, like, more efficient. Like that was one of their goals as well. And so I guess for me, the writing was on the wall for layoffs, because you don't look for efficiencies in your business and spend a bunch of money in technology if you're not going to then, have the people that were doing that work, be replaced by technology. AI is going to do that as well. So one of the things that I've been thinking about in general is that, they're in markets all over the place. And they said more than once, demand is down, inventory is up. They said that several times. And, I feel like that's nothing new. We've known that. So we all need to plan to that. Right. And, I'm doing business with some property managers in different markets that, because they knew those things, they made very specific strategic changes in their business. And although those things are true in their market, they're actually ahead of pace, and one of the customers is ahead of pace on bookings by about 25 or 30% ahead. And so it's because they made very specific tactical changes in their business. So I say to myself, okay, demand's down, inventory's up. If I was running a business, does that make it okay? Or what are you going to do to change that? So I wonder by market if that's true. And if it's true across all markets, then I would ask the operations team or the sales and marketing team, really, what are they doing to change that? Because I don't see it in all markets. Steve, how about in your business? Is it true in all markets?
Well, I mean, in terms of 2023 and 2024, it was certainly market by market. So we had certain markets that did reasonably well. Other markets had pretty big variances. Some of it was based on inventory. I do think oversupply in some markets probably was one of the bigger factors. Port Aransas, Texas, for sure, was a market where there was just so much inventory, new properties added, that it kind of diluted the demand, and ADRs dropped as well. And then other markets where there wasn't snow, like Deep Creek, that hurt it, at least in the first quarter. So, it is market by market. But let's get back to Vacasa and the fact that when they went public, they said their technology gave them an edge and that they were a better company. I remember Matt Roberts on podcast, on earning calls, just talking about how much better Vacasa was at property management because of quote unquote technology. And I got the sense from Rob Graber in particular that it was pretty somber. I mean, with them looking at these numbers, with them having to do another round of layoffs, and with them literally having a pretty terrible cash position, they're upside down on their balance sheet. Their current liabilities are $150 million more than current assets, and their current assets are getting really tight. So, this is a company that's in financial distress. And then the other thing that they talked on multiple times was churn, and they indicated a 5% churn, which they've not been open to revealing until this call for a while. That's not good, because if there is all this new supply and they're spending over $200 million on sales and marketing, why are they down on unit count? And certainly one of the things I think they reported in their investor letter was they needed to focus on the guest experience and the owner relation. Surprise, surprise, that's not a technology piece. And then, by the way, they're letting go of their chief operating officer, who in previous quarterly calls, Rob Graber had gone out of the way to say what an asset it was to have John Banzek and TJ Clark from Turnkey, be with him. So to say that it was a pretty sad, pretty dour earnings call would be an understatement. I mean, if you kind of read through all the information, there is just almost no good news. And like I said, I mean, I looked at their numbers on adjusted basis. My numbers are slightly different than theirs because of how I calculate some of their add backs, but they still lost $53 million in Q4 2023 versus losing $50 million in quarter for 2022. So certainly it went worse for them in the fourth quarter. And in the 2024, they can't even provide earnings guidance because of what they're saying, so much economic headwind. So really, really bad all the way around. And um, I don't even know if there was any good news in there. It was just a lot of really bad information.
Well, you know, I was trying to, and I know, Steve, that you have me on because sometimes we disagree in areas, and that's okay because, you know, otherwise it wouldn't be interesting, right? But you know, there were areas I looked at them and I said to myself, how does this compare to the industry as a whole, right? And you know, I didn't hear anything in their earnings report that said, wow, nobody else in the industry is seeing any of this, right? And then when they were talking about some of the things that they're doing differently, like distribution, extensive distribution, niche listings, you know, they're doing the things if you were running a small business you'd want to do, right? You'd say, okay, how do we correct this? So, you know, it felt to me like there were some bright spots in the report. I'm sure, you know, I didn't go out and run out and buy Vacasa shares, but some of the stuff they shared that they're doing are the things I would do if I was running a vacation rental business. So, that's kind of my, you know, my feedback. And, you know, uh, as I understand it, they put a lot of money into their homeowner, experience, let's call it, and they needed to. They needed to, because, you know, replacing homeowners is very, very expensive, especially good ones. So, you know, I don't know, it feels like, or it seems to me like they're doing the right things they should do for the position they're in today.
Well, let's talk about numbers. I know you love talking about numbers. So the number that's pretty glaring is total current assets of 265 million, down from a year ago, 381 million. But wait, because that 265 million sounds like a big number, except for when you take a look at current liabilities at 422 million. So they're upside down over 150 million dollars on their balance sheet. And like I said, they lost money in Q4 quite a bit. They historically lose money in Q1, and their revenue has deteriorated, and you know, they are trying to cut their way to profitability, but they just have massive costs like their technology stack and their operations and support, as well as their their sales and marketing piece that just really handcuff their ability. So, you know, I would be concerned if I was a shareholder of Vacasa. I've said this before, that they're going to run out of cash given how bad their balance sheet is. I mean, you cannot continue to operate with a negative balance sheet like this. And I mean, they're in trust accounting states. I'll take their word that they're not dipping into their trust accounting restricted cash, but I mean, they are in danger of running out of cash, and they're one or two hiccups away from being in a situation where they may not be able to make payroll. So this is certainly not a good situation for a company that came out. And again, they raised $800 million of capital. So let's not think that they did this on the cheap. And they deployed that capital. And where has it gone? I mean, they have pretty much an unprofitable business. I know you said they're profitable. Well, when I ran the adjusted numbers, and again, everybody can take a look at their financials, and I'm not necessarily adding back some of the stuff they're adding back. I came up to them losing about $24 million in 2023. Now, granted, that's better than they did in 2022, but they're still losing money by my calculations, and even by their calculations. I think they said they made 28 million. That's like 2% of their revenue. So just a terribly run business. And then the leadership churn just continues. You know, they were blowing smoke about John Banzik just a couple quarterly calls ago. Now he's gone. And everybody in the industry knew he was not the right fit for chief operating officer. I mean, anybody who's known JB for a while, and I've known him for a while, he's got, strong business development, experience, and he did a great job there. But chief operating officer is a completely different skill set, and they parked him over there, and basically he was set up for failure. But why did they put him there? I mean, it just makes no sense. I mean, they had someone like Bob Milne who they demoted, and then they had, they brought someone from, I think it was Angie's List or Open Table, one of those companies, to run a property management company that failed, and then they put John Banzik in operations, and he was not an operator. So I mean, it's I mean, if I'm a shareholder, I'm just looking, where is the hope? Because I did not hear the hope on the call. I heard churn, I heard burn rate, I heard losses, I heard layoffs, and I
Yeah.
heard you can't even forecast 2024. They can't even, it's the end of February. They cannot even forecast 2024. That is alarming.
Yeah, that was probably my biggest takeaway on the whole thing. No, even like hints on how things are going in Q1, and we're almost done with Q1, and no hints on what the year could look like and is looking like in markets, because obviously, in every one of your markets what the leading indicators are and where you are. So I would agree that was a missed opportunity to make investors feel comfortable. Like I said, I didn't rush out and buy Vacasa shares. Now, as far as executive placement, as well as I know, that when a company gets bought or gets invested in, that people, you use the word you said he was put in a holding spot. It's basically what you said, right? And that's true with any company that does mergers or, buys companies or invests in companies, is they get somebody who was usually the original founder, and they go, okay, we need to put you someplace. And they're there until their time is up, which is usually a date in the future. And I'm not saying that's true with JB at all. I'm just saying that that's them being ahead somewhere and then moving out is kind of the playbook, right?
Hey, Michelle, can I ask you a question?
Uh-oh.
Are you getting a consulting fee from Vacasa Internal Relations? Because that is the best spin I've heard in a while. I mean, it's unbelievable. Look, I get it. He came with the deal, the Vacasa turnkey deal. He was the co-founder that came. TJ Clark did not, interestingly enough. And JB was an SVP. He was a senior vice president. But wait, they promoted him to chief operating officer about a year ago. And then they spent all these quarterly calls talking about how effective JB was and how he was really going to work to improve operations at Vacasa. So, I mean, you can say, well, his time was up. Yeah, his time is up because he was never an operator. That wasn't his skill set. He's been business development all the way. And I'm sure the future, wherever he ends up, will be more on a business development scale. But why? I said this before, why would they put him in a position to fail? I mean, you had Bob Milne, who ran Wyndham Vacation Rentals. He used to be the Vacasa COO. He's still there. When the guy from Angie's List or Open Door, I can't remember, I think it was Craig Smith, became COO, Bob Milne stayed. And I mean, by all accounts, he's still very engaged in the operation. And yet now they said they've contacted and they're doing an executive search for a new COO. Who is the person that could take on this mess and clean it up? I mean,
Are you saying I should apply for that role?
well, I think you would be great because you don't say no to titles. So I mean, you were like, oh yeah, COO, I could do that.
Yeah, with my sales and marketing background, let's do that.
Oh, it's unbelievable. But at any rate, well, we've had fun on Vacasa. We wish them well. I still think somebody buys them. I continue to believe that's really their only course. I mean, because their cash flow position is a disaster. But I know as much as we'd love to talk about Vacasa some more, and there's all kinds of news stories, and I saw some virtue signaling from one of our favorite people in the industry where he was like, "Oh, let's help the people that got laid off," and he got a lot of likes for that. We're going to go now to another company that actually had some really significant layoffs, and that was Expedia. So I kind of was shocked by this. I don't know about you, Michelle, but you may not get shocked easily. But right after the Expedia earnings call 2 weeks ago, which it was announced that Peter Kern was stepping down, and we'll talk about the new CEO because I think that's important. All of a sudden, they had a press release that they were going to lay off over 8% of their workforce, 1,500 people, just this week. It was late Monday that they began notifying 1,500 employees that they would be laid off, quote, in light of the company's organizational and technological transformation. What did you think about that?
Well, this is along the lines of, so when I heard they were moving to one platform, okay, so what was this now? 2 years ago, they were talking about moving everybody's back end to be basically the same back end. This was inevitable, right? Because they were running two tech stacks. Think about this. They were running two tech stacks. They were running in some organizations, literally two different organizations in their business. They all put it into one now. Well, what's going to happen? There's going to be people that they don't need anymore. So I guess I wasn't surprised, just to be honest with you. I was not surprised at all. So you can't be surprised on that, really, Steve?
I am surprised. I mean,
Tell me why.
well, it's a massive layoff, right?
Yeah.
So the last layoff they did was about 100 staffers in October 2023. 1,500 is a huge number. And reading through some of what they were saying, they were really going to target some of their higher end salary people that were doing coding and technology. But the other thing here is I'm not even sure if all their integration is finished. I mean, I think there's just so much ambiguity that's coming out of Expedia. To me, it seemed like, as just because Peter Kern is going out, better to do it now, so the new CEO doesn't have her hands dirty with this. But I think it was just a drastic cost-cutting exercise to try to get them back to certain ratios to get their stock back up. And I mean, this doesn't look like this was planned. This just looks like, based on the environments, particularly the U.S. market, which we'll get into. U.S. market looks terrible right now. This was basically a slash and burn layoff. This certainly, it wasn't something that you would do.
No, well, what you said was they were, higher salaries, people coding, things like that. Well, then, like that's consistent and congruent with that's what I would suspect if they moved to one platform. It took a lot of brains to put everything into one platform. Just think about, that the vacation rental side versus the hotel side, and have everybody working from the same tech stack. It took them years because it's not easy to do. So I guess for me, that kind of makes sense. Now the numbers, I don't know, it would certainly be interesting to see like a pie chart of what roles those people have in the organization. And if there are any front end sales and marketing versus the higher salary coding, technology, product managers, project managers, engineers, etc.
Well, you're very close to Seattle. Maybe we can send you up there and they can give you a little diagram of who they're letting go. I'm sure.
I'll just jump up and knock on their door right after I go by Vacasa in Portland.
There you go. You could hit two birds with one stone. So here's the thing, right? And because Verbo is part of Expedia, we have to kind of talk about it. So
yeah,
let me ask you a question. Where is the industry with the well-anticipated Verbo integration into Expedia, because this has been announced over and over again that, that the Verbo inventory would be in Expedia and it would be via Verbo as opposed to trying to go through a channel manager into Expedia. What have you heard? Because I mean, we just haven't seen it yet.
So what I heard was anything that is, and what I understood, anything that is clusterable will still go through Expedia to be listed as a vacation rental product. Okay. So that means depending on if your property management system, which none of them do it at all, I don't think, clusters, you have to use a channel manager, and not all channel management cluster or do the by unit category, right? So that you'll continue to need to do that for listings in Expedia. Verbo will show, this is as I understand it, Verbo will show in Expedia homes and that clusterable inventory when they need the inventory in certain locations. But it's all being, when you search, it's all being from one database.
All right,
So
for those who may not understand what clustering means, it's basically complexes. In Expedia, a condo complex would be a cluster similar to a hotel unit, and then you potentially could list the units generically, which some of the companies do, like Castle in Hawaii, etc. They're gonna use more of that clustering, and this also happens on Booking.com. However, whole home inventory or individual units, which are what mostly display on VRBO, that's where I really want to focus, because you would think after 8 years of Expedia having purchased Verbo, you would have that integration, and I haven't seen it.
they want Verbo to be their vacation rental platform and where people go. They don't necessarily want to go to Expedia and show, if you're going to Destin, Florida, to be the top 10 listings, individual vacation homes. They want that to exist on Verbo. That's how I understand things. So I don't think that suppliers are going to see, it's funny that to call a vacation rental a supplier, because really in that world, that's what you are. You supply inventory. Something that I've learned on the Booking Pal board is that the language they use, I'm like, wait, supplier, they're not the supplier. But anyways, it's not what the supplier would want necessarily things to be, but I think that's how Verbo wants it to be.
What about One Key? Is One Key going to work seamlessly between Expedia and Verbo?
Well, I know I was on Verbo doing some testing for a customer, and it came up as an opportunity for me to spend my $23.31 on Verbo.
All right, well, let's agree to disagree on this. I think the plan is to integrate Verbo into Expedia, because one of the bigger things that Expedia has is bundling, and you can't do bundling if you're on two different platforms. And of course, as you just said, although you're contradicting yourself slightly, you're getting all of these savings of people when you consolidate to one platform, which supposedly that's what they were doing. But I want to ask you a question about this. So on the Verbo side, have you heard some of the news that they haven't really run around and put out a press release? So first, subscriptions went from $4.99 or $5.99 to $6.99. They went up $100, but more importantly, they're sunsetting subscriptions. So it looks like summer 2024 will be the end of VRBO subscription, and the only way you'll be able to advertise on VRBO is through paid per booking. Have you heard that?
I have heard that. I have heard that. Although I've been hearing that for a while. So, like if you have a date, that's better than I've heard, Now here's something else though. My sources tell me that Verbo is down, is up like 18% in inventory and 19% down in revenue. So, is that a result of a less spend on marketing? because they have spent less in marketing. Is that a result of Airbnb getting traction? And, you know, and I can tell you that I can specifically speak about a couple of markets, and I can see Airbnb growing in their markets and surpassing VRBO in some markets as far as revenue being generated. My point was that anybody who paid per unit, and losing that, they're going to find that their costs are go up no matter what, but probably not as much as they were before because bookings are down.
All right, so Michelle is trying to use some humor to say it's not as bad as I'm making it sound like your costs really aren't going to go up because
Well, it's not going to.
subscription's not as good as it used to be because Verbo is tanking so bad. So you're not going to lose as much money as you think. But so
Pretty much.
that's a happy spin on that one. The other thing, which can't be great for some people who may have some cash flow issues, is VRBO is going to become merchant of record, which means they're going to hold cash as opposed to remitting it upon booking. So have you heard that?
I have not heard that either.
Well, so, you know, surprise, surprise, cash is worth something, depending on what, you know, what you look at. You're probably making 4 to 5% on a pretty big float. Airbnb sits on billions of dollars of float. Booking.com just went to it, and it looks like Verbo will be going to it again. We were told summer, and we were told by VRBO that yes, they reduced marketing spend in the third and fourth quarter of 2023 because of all this quote unquote integration, which is TBD on what actually happened. But they've now turning back on the throttle, and we should start to see VRBO do much better in the first quarter. So I ask you, Michelle, do you have first quarter numbers? Have you actually seen a pickup on Verbo? Because it was grim for the fourth quarter and third quarter for Verbo in terms of year over year share. First quarter numbers, have you actually seen?
Oh yeah, no. No. Bookings are down big time in Q1 from what I have seen. And I'm going to go back to something else you just said. You were talking about them holding the money and making money on, you know, making interest on the money they're holding. 7% of Airbnb's revenue comes from making interest on holding that money between when the guest pays and when they stay and they pay it out. 7%. So just let's quickly do that. What does that do to VRBO? If we take their total revenue and 7%, all profit goes right to the bottom line. Not a bad deal.
Not a bad deal if you're trying to get your EBITDA and your revenue up, and you're taking a look at how to do that, which I'm sure Barry Diller is looking at carefully. Okay, Michelle, let's talk about the last subject, which we kind of teased at the beginning of this segment, which is that Peter Kern is stepping down, and Ariane Gorin is going to be starting as the CEO of Expedia May 13th, 2024. And she will be obviously the first CEO executive of Expedia. Do you know Ariane? Have you met her? She was more or less out of the UK, I believe.
Yeah, no, I have not. I would love to, but I have not.
Any thoughts?
I'm pretty excited about it. You know, for the travel industry, but, you know, even just in general, as far as women, you know, leading a publicly traded company like that. But for the industry of the vacation rental, I'll tell you a story. I was at the women's conference, and I walk up to a group of ladies. I know them all, and I'm with my mom, and I'm telling her who they all are. And I introduced them, and there's probably 6 of them. And I said, well, she used to be the CEO of this company. She founded this company, but every one of them are now on their own. They're doing their own thing independently of any companies they've ever worked for before. And I got thinking to myself, you know, is that some sort of trend where women lead organizations and then find themselves, I'm going to say, this is how I feel it, too strong, that then individuals get their feathers ruffled, and sorry, Steve, of the male kind, get their feathers ruffled because the women are strong, and they use comments about them that are not very kind, aggressive, bull in a china shop, assertive, bossy, which all of those I believe you would never say about a male leader. And it just, it's Women's Month. So it got me thinking about, I'm glad to see her in that realm. And I'd like to see in our industry more women at the helm. And it's not going that direction from everything that I see in the individuals that Alex Husner is, the latest. She was a C-level at a company that is, the executives are mostly men. She's now on her own doing her own thing, but it's constant.
Well, I don't want to make light
Easy.
of this subject because it's important. I know we've had quite a few women on the last couple episodes who have talked about the disparity in this industry of C-level leadership versus below level. So in our company, we have roughly 70% of our staff is female. I think that's probably consistent. If you were to take a look at the VRMA registration, it probably is about 70% women that attend these conferences or would be employees. And so some of the things you're saying are pretty accurate and something to really consider. Now, there are more women CEOs than there have been in the past. Demi Horvat is the chief operating officer over at AirDNA. Julia Brinkley is over at Beyond Pricing. Amber Knight is a high-level executive in Habit IQ. So, I mean, there's just a few examples of women who have been elevated into pretty significant roles for companies. I think some of what's happened within this industry over the past 18 months is restructuring. And there's been layoffs of men and there's been layoffs of women as well. And in some cases, some of the people have left voluntarily, and they've done it to, take a look at other opportunities, or because the company they were working at, they've just felt wasn't the right fit for them. So I think it's a little bit more complicated, subject. I do think certainly, we as an industry need to take a look carefully at kind of the imbalance at the C-level and down. And I know that one of the things that's come up is, the VRMA, they spend a lot of time on DEI and human trafficking, but why aren't they talking about equality of women in particular, and about protecting women from things like sexual harassment or domestic assault? We're not going to cover that in this episode because we've had a couple episodes talking about it, but I mean, it is something that I am hearing a lot of information from women who think, this needs to be elevated. And look, let's give credit to Amy Hinote. She's the one who started the Women's Summit, which you are a big part of in 2023. And maybe that's the place, but there's no guarantee that there's going to be another Women's Summit in 2024. She tends to do those things biannual, but I do think it's important for women to be able to get together and talk about this and talk about how to improve their position within the industry. But I want to talk about another subject. So it is a couple other companies that are facing some pretty bad numbers. So Sonder, which, we didn't really see a lot at the VRMA events. They're more of an urban operator. But again, we talk about Vacasa raising 800 million. Sonder raised well over $1 billion of equity. And they announced a layoff of 17% of their corporate staff, 106 workers, and they look like they're on their last hurrah. Their market cap is down to 58 million. They're back down to a 52-week low of 233 after doing one of those stock splits, a reverse merger to get their stock back up over $1. Um, things look grim. And then another company called Front Desk, I'm not sure if you remember Jesse DePinto, but they announced basically they were laying off their entire organization, 200 people. And that was in the first part of January. So, there's just some real grim news in terms of layoffs. What are your thoughts about this? Because I mean, I talked to vendors who are laying people off quietly, right? So these are just press releases that somehow Skift gets a hold of. But most companies are being a lot smarter. I mean, we know we all know companies that are just letting people go because there's a pretty big slowdown in the US market.
Yeah, boy, that was loaded. Let's start with Sonder. They have proprietary technology themselves. So what is that weight covering them? When I've heard the data about Airbnb in general, it sounds like urban is coming back stronger as far as demand goes. So, maybe they should have done something sooner and they wouldn't be in the same situation, because it sounds like those markets are picking up. Now, I know that right now you could take a look at their code, because as I understand it, they're trying to sell the technology that they developed. So again, technology, property management system focused. And, having worked for a property management company, you guys, property management systems are hard. I think I just posted something that said, I love my property management system, said no property manager ever, because it doesn't matter what the property management system does. The property managers want them to do something else. So it just feels like they're always unhappy with it. But to have a property management system that you're building your entire business around, so you as a company have to invest in that. Maybe that's what's broken about Vacasa. They've always tried to be a technology first company, and maybe, we all have our opinions about that, so we won't go there. But those are some consistencies of the two companies you just talked about. Now, as far as vendors quietly laying people off, I mean, we knew going into this year, it was even, last half of last year, that people were purchasing slower than they had. So I think it was last month, I had you, Steve, and Megan and Ben on a podcast, and we were talking about, is this year about revenue or it's about cutting costs? And you all three agreed that cutting costs was an important thing to look at. But one of the things you pointed out specifically was technology. And where have you invested in things that seem cool, but maybe you got overzealous? And when I say you, I mean all of you, and evaluating all those things and cutting some of those things. And so I think in general, if you're not selling the main thing of what everybody needs a PMS, how many years do they switch? Is it 5? Is it 7? Or it's 8? Right? So you have X amount of people that will switch every year. Then the next thing is, what else do they need to be efficient? Well, probably none of the PMS's housekeeping system is as robust as property managers would like. So that's another area to invest. But you don't have to invest in every little thing. So companies are looking at that closer. So I think it's harder to sell the ancillary technology products than it has ever been. And so this is what happens.
Well, during that webinar, I think Ben alluded to the fact that too many property managers had toys or programs, and they didn't really kind of calculate how expensive all of these things are, because, it looks cheap when it's $1 unit here or $2 a unit here. But if you stack them up, it becomes a lot of money. And what are your benefits? So I think, for sure, you're seeing clients starting to pick and choose between some of these different pieces they have and unwind them. And then, the other part is travel and entertainment. We've tightened our belt significantly on travel and entertainment. Ben was talking, Ben Edwards, as well, about significantly reducing travel and entertainment. Well, that's going to impact conferences and vendors as well as their ability to sell. And look, I mean, the U.S. market has significant headwinds right now. So I'm going to give you dealer choice on the subject we talk about next, because I know you love to pick. You like it when you're in control. So we can talk about Airbnb, we can talk about franchise models, or we can talk about how important it is to build a direct business.
Oh, I'm gonna pick three, but I'm gonna be contrarian a little bit on it, but I'm gonna pick three.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay, so I saw a post recently of a property manager that was boasting that they had like 87% direct business and 13% OTA. And they were like, oh, I'm doing such a great job. And they're in a market that I am actually consulting with a company in. And they're not sold out. You know, even in the prime of summer, maybe they have a couple of sold out weeks. So they're not completely sold out. But what I've helped this company do is to look at the entire pie and say, can distribution be additive to what you're doing? Like, it's not instead of. So when you brag and say it's only 10% of this and 90% of that, that means it's a finite and you're filling it up. Well, of course, you're going to do that, but it's not. And so I believe, you know, like, it's an overall strategy, not just a direct booking strategy. Yes, you want more people to book direct. So what do? Invest in marketing, invest in email segmentation, invest when they get to your website. Do you have a mobile friendly or a mobile first booking engine? Is it easy to book with you? How many clicks is it? If it's offline and they call the reservation, is somebody answering the phone 24/7? Are they trained in sales, right? Those are all the direct things you can do. And then the rest of it has to be distribution. So where do you get bookings for the lowest cost? And, like, I mentioned that I'm on the Booking Pal board. Well, they've switched to a per unit model. Well, that's just low hanging fruit. Why pay a channel manager a percentage if you can get distribution to a bunch of lesser costs? It's like flipping through a travel magazine and being where people are looking. So it's really the new advertising of today. So I think you have to have a balanced approach. And, if you just relied on VRBO in the last 6 months, your bookings are down. I can already tell you that. I don't need to look at anybody's business. If you only relied on VRBO, bookings are down.
Oh, but Michelle, we heard that if you're on Expedia, your bookings are up. So maybe that was just one isolated example. Michelle's laughing. Look, here's what I want to say, because I think this is an important subject, and I think the truth is in the middle. So you have one extreme where Vacasa is at 30% direct, and that is just way too low.
Agreed.
70% reliant on OTAs, and they're a nationwide company. So you can't say, well, this particular market like Hawaii requires a lot of OTAs. I mean, we're talking a national player. And then you have other people who, some of them are podcasters who brag they have 90% direct bookings. Well, I would say, okay, there's flaw there too, right? So somewhere in the middle is where you should be. We ended 2023 at about 60% was our direct business, which meant our OTA business was 40%. And that's up from a low of 50-50. So, we're pretty happy with the strides we've made on direct. But you also raise why OTAs are important. And OTAs are important because you need to constantly bring in new customers, right? And OTAs have tremendous distribution power. And typically, they are much better at mobile than most property managers. So, they've been masters at mobile. Some of them have customers that really don't go outside of those channels. Airbnb has probably the most sticky. So, it's just a good strategy to have a balance. Now, how do you kind of, work it so that once they make a booking with you through the OTA, they book again through your direct website? Well, one of the things is with pricing. So we use pricing plans to increase our pricing on the OTAs, generally for their markup, sometimes more than their markup in the case of Airbnb, because we have a taxation issue that we don't need to get into. But we mark them up. And then in our case, we don't have a guest service fee. So in general, our website, our direct website's about 22% lower than if they were booking through an OTA. And so it's important to then educate those new guests that come in. But I mean, it's incredible how short-sighted people are to say, oh, we just want to focus on direct, when you can use pricing plans to literally have no costs. It might even be cheaper than if you have reservation agents and whatever cost you're paying for your direct or your integrated marketing firm, et cetera, for your direct site. So I think 100% agree with you that it's a mix, and the best companies have a sound fundamental mix and a strategy and pricing plans, and they're also talking to their OTA partners and pushing them to make sure that they're maximizing on those channels.
I don't remember if it was Expedia or Booking.com, but one of them was over 70% that were booked on mobile websites. So the vacation rental industry can't compete with that. We don't even have mobile first websites. We have mobile friendly websites. So we can't compete with that. The other thing is that 55% of Airbnb's bookings are in their app. Okay, so just think about that for a minute, you guys. That means that we don't even get a chance to market to those people. You don't even get a chance to be in front of them because they're searching destinations and they're going from this destination to the next, all in the Airbnb app and then booking that way. So, you know, like you've got to be in these OTAs to get the exposure. You just have to. And the billboard effect is the third thing, is that is alive and well. And there are a bunch of niche channels out there that a lot of your competitors aren't on. Get on the niche channels. It doesn't cost you anymore if you use the flat rate that like BookingPal has. It doesn't cost you anymore to do it. Get out there and get the billboard effect going and get the bookings where your competitors are not at.
All right, well, good advice. I will say, again, I'm a big fan of distribution. We did cut some of the smaller OTAs just because in some cases they created some resource challenges. So it's important to test, but also to measure and make sure that they're not so so difficult to deal with that they just literally create a lot of labor costs. So, you know, Marriott Homes and Villas is one who a couple of our divisions had, and we said, get rid of them. But I will ask you for this. Predictions for 2024. Michelle, it's bleak. It's really brutal. You're hearing stories. I'm sure you know people who are really scared. Are things going to get better or are things going to get worse?
Well, you know, it's funny. Somebody asked me, I was on a podcast last month and I said I was optimistic, that I was hopeful. I'm less optimistic today than I was, just, you know, I am. However, you know, like I'm working right now with a couple of different clients who said, we need to optimize the things we're already doing. And those who do that sort of thing are going to win. You know, if you're on OTAs and you're on Airbnb, make sure that your pictures are the best pictures. Make sure your amenities are checked. Make sure that you respond to inquiries. Make sure you respond to the reviews. Like optimize each one of those channels. If you're going to do it right and get the bookings, you know, get up in their algorithms. And I think that the people are going to win are the people who look at what they're doing and what's working and hone in it and make it better. And then look where you're completely, like if you're not doing targeted email blasts on a consistent basis, do it. If you're not listing out on OTAs, expand, do it. And I don't mean just do VRBO. Oh, I know another thing I wanted to say, Steve, and that is book hotel type OTAs are different than VRBO and HomeAway. Okay. And that is because hotel style OTAs guests are hotel guests. So you're trying to get in front of an audience that doesn't typically book a vacation rental and convert them. Those are new eyeballs. VRBO and HomeAway, you got to be there. They're table stakes. Your homeowners expect you to, and you might as well just, you know, do what you do with like Steve says and make sure that the rate is right. So you can, I call it self-insure for last minute cancellations and tax issues and things like that. But optimize the places that you're at.
That's right. Well, the OTAs, we forgot to mention, they're a very good source of last minute booking. Again, you have to be careful. There can be some fraud involved, et cetera. And, we've had good success with booking.com. I'm actually going to their Click conference in May. And I would encourage people to really take a look carefully at booking.com because they're one of our best increasing channels, 23 versus 2022. So booking.com, no relation with Booking Pal, although they are a
No.
partner.
Yeah.
Um,
And what you asked me in the end is, what do you think is going to happen in the future? You know what I mean? I'm tired of hearing that demand is down. Okay, we all know it. What are you going to do about it? And that inventory is up. I would dig into each market because yes, there's markets that are adding inventory, but like I think the floodgates are not still open like they were. So like, let's stop talking about it. Let's move forward on what everybody's going to do differently. And I think it's going to be a tough year. However, here's also my projections. As long as the wheels don't fall off between now and May, we will get more last minute bookings than we've ever gotten.
All right. Well, we are ending on a happy note. There's some optimism there. I finally got it. So Michelle's saying last minute bookings are coming. It's just a matter of when, not if. So good news ahead. Well, thank you, Michelle. Appreciate you being back on.
Yeah.
And thank you, Heather, for another great episode. And for anyone who wants to look at past episodes, it's go to the website straightfirevr.com. You'll see all the previous episodes. Thank you again.